Hello and welcome to The Food Chain from the BBC World Service with me, Ruth Alexander. This week we're finding out about the real Willy Wonkas, chocolatiers past and present, who, like Roald Dahl's character in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, invent the sweet treats we like to eat.
The worst product imaginable. Also the best product imaginable. It's like a needy child.
We discover what kind of chocolate we might be eating in the future. Hint, it might not be chocolate. Very sweet.
Interesting. I'd have loved to try that one, actually.
We start with a story close to home. In fact, with the family legend of the producer of this programme, Hannah Bewley.
Yes, I've grown up being told the tale of how my grandpa, who worked in a chocolate factory...
Very nice work, if you can get it.
Very nice. When he was there, apparently invented an iconic British chocolate bar. And it may have all started with my grandma's simple cakes made out of a breakfast cereal of puffed rice. Both my grandparents, Edith and John Henderson, have passed away now, so I've asked someone else who was there to tell the story.
Hi, my name is Jill Bewley, Hannah's mum.
What do you remember as a child of the story that was told as to how Toffee Crisp came about?
Oh, well, it was sort of a bit of a legend, really, in the family that my mum, she loved birthday parties. My birthdays were full of cakes. And one of the things that she used to always make was the famous crispy cakes. You know, just using chocolate and Rice Krispies. And that sparked an idea. My dad or my mum suggested that they took them into Macintoshes, into the experimental department, which is where my dad worked, and see whether they could sort of develop something.
Did he physically take a tray in to the office, do you know?
I'm afraid, I really don't know. He wouldn't have definitely made any himself. He would have said, Edith, can you make me some cakes? I'll take them into the office. And so I know that they then covered them in chocolate. They made a sort of a bar, covered them in chocolate, and sort of put that forward to the board, who said, yeah, it's kind of okay, but I think there's something a bit missing. So, of course, Macintoshes being famous for their toffee, they said, how about we put some toffee on top? And I think that was where the sort of the difficulties came about, was trying to get the right consistency of toffee. This is what my dad told me anyway. So it didn't run off the top, but it was soft enough that you bit into it and it wasn't too chewy like an actual toffee sweet. And so, yeah, that was launched in, as far as I remember, in 1963.
Hannah, that's a lovely tale.
Yes, my grandpa was someone who took his chocolate and sweets extremely seriously. He worked for the confectioners Macintoshes in Halifax in the north of England for many years. That later merged with another confectionery company, Rowntree's, and that was then taken over by Nestle in the 1980s. I'd always heard the family story, but I wanted to ask an expert whether it's really true that my grandpa was behind this famous chocolate bar. So I've been to see Laura Yeoman of the Borthwick Institute at the University of York. Now, York, which is just east of Halifax, is known as Chocolate City, as that's where many factories used to stand. And Laura looks after the archives for those confectioners. So we've come down to the basement? Where are we?
We're in one of our strong rooms.
I was maybe expecting more Willy Wonka, less cardboard boxes.
Yeah, it's not that exciting, unfortunately. But what we like to think as archivists is that the boxes themselves don't look exciting, it's the contents.
There are all sorts of confectionery treasures to be found, including an antique packet of a well-known sweet.
I've got some fruit pastels somewhere. Yes, dessert mint pastels 1933 and Rowntree's assorted packet pastels and clear gums.
Oh my goodness! They look
Very much like a Rowntree's fruit pastel now. Yeah. These are 1930s ones, I think.
So those are almost
Yes.
100 years old?
Yes, it looks like it, and they're slightly bigger than standard fruit pastels I think we would recognise now, but they're very similar shapes.
And among the treasures were some records relating to my family legend.
Yes, so we know that we actually have a box of your grandfather's archives. So there's no one document, unfortunately, I wish there was, that would tell us exactly what he did as a career. But we found lots and lots of little references to him. So we've got everything from board minutes to staff magazines.
Okay, great. So the story of him possibly working on the toffee crisp is not completely invented.
Definitely not. We have evidence of him being on something called the New Lines Committee. From the board minutes, we can see them asking the New Lines Committee to produce new products, particularly something with crisp in the title.
The chairman said he would like to see crispy or rip as an alternative for introduction in 1963 and asked the New Lines Committee to press on as rapidly as possible with its efforts. Another suggestion was that licorice toffee should be studied. Mr. Watts said that toffee cup was a good product which might well be exploited in a different form.
So this is August 1962, and this is the first time that I can actually find any reference to anything that might actually end up being the toffee crisp. They're talking about licorice toffee. They're still playing on what Halifax is known for toffee.
That's part of the family story, is that it was a crispy chocolate cake, essentially, that my granny used to make. And when Grandpa took it to the office, they said, yes, but put some toffee on it. That's what we're known for.
That does sound completely plausible. So they're deliberately looking at this point for gaps in the market. There's nothing quite like it in the market in the 1960s.
Macintosh's Toffee Crisp gives you more go. Crispy center, tasty toffee, creamy chocolate, more energy. It's every bite. New Macintosh's Toffee Crisp gives you more go.
Do we have any idea about the sales? Are there any records on those?
So yes, we know that they were estimating to produce about 2,250 tonnes in 1964. And that is coming from the kind of sales and advertising content from meetings. That's not something that you just test the market with. That is something that you bombard the market with.
Laura Yeoman at the Borthwick Institute Archives. By my calculations, based on the weight of a modern bar, 2,250 tonnes a year is 59 million bars.
A year, that is a lot of chocolate.
A lot of chocolate. Now, one of the fascinating aspects of this story for me is that Grandpa actually started out as an engineer, building bridges and things, and ended up in the chocolate game because he was related to the Mackintosh family. They were one of England's big confectionery makers. Mum reckons he found his calling there, and not just because he had a real sweet tooth. And what was it like growing up in a household where your dad worked at the chocolate factory?
Well, let's put it this way. There were a few trips to the dentist. I inherited my father's sweet tooth, and I remember there was a specific drawer in our living room that I wasn't meant to go in, and that was where the sweets were stored. And, of course, being in the experimental department, they would come home in their bucket load, these sweets. And I remember eating handfuls of these things. My teeth weren't in a very good state when as a young child, but it was worth it. It was worth the sacrifice.
And in old age, his sweet tooth, it didn't decline at all, did it?
Well, no, as you remember, there actually still was a cupboard when you were young, wasn't there? Full of chocolate bars, and you were allowed to maybe go and have something after your dinner.
Well, Easter was the best time to go. I remember Easter being such a treat to go to their house.
Well, because of the Easter Bunny and the hunt. Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of chocolate in the house, but yeah, it was a good environment, but maybe not the healthiest one.
That's Jill Bewley, Hannah's mum. Hannah, it sounds like you both have wonderful chocolatey family memories.
Yes, and Mum remembers the town where they lived, Halifax, even smelling like toffee when they were making it. It was nice. And they say to this day that nearby York also smells of chocolate because it's still home to a number of confectioners, old names and new. I've been to meet one of the newcomers, Sophie Jewett of York Cocoa House, to find out how a chocolatier tries to make a splash in the market today.
Our vision was always to bring chocolate making back to the city. Obviously, York has this amazing heritage about York and chocolates, but a lot of that industry had left not only the city but the UK as well. And so what we do is we work with different origins of cocoa beans in order to explore the flavours and the characteristics of those cocoa beans and then turn that into different types of chocolate. So this is our bean store. So here in the manufactory you can see the full process. So we sort through the cocoa beans all by hand, we roast them, we take them to about 130 degrees, and then we pass the cocoa beans through this contraption that's got 5 shelves in it, so 5 different layers, and then 5 different vacuum that suck away the bits of the bean that we don't want. And then it goes into the rest of our manufactory.
Okay, so let's go inside. And there is an incredible smell that hits you just as you walk through the door. That is delicious.
Yeah, I can't smell that. Completely immune to that smell now. So you can see that we've got these larger pieces of machinery. So we have the first piece of machinery, which is a really, really big blender. And that's going to break up the cocoa nibs under heat and pressure and create a really thick paste. So what we call cocoa mass. So in our chocolate making process, we have this mixing stage, we've got a refining stage, and that's kind of what breaks the ingredients down so that we don't detect it on the tongue, so it's all really, really smooth. And then the final stage is this quite mythical stage that people call it conching. And that was a process that was apparently developed by Rudolf Lindt, who discovered that by allowing the chocolates to aerate over a period of time, drove off these volatile characteristics.
So there is the machine going. Is that all of those cocoa nibs in that big vat there?
Yeah, so it's like one big giant blender at the moment, kind of breaking them down, and then it'll be the thick chocolate paste.
So why did you want to go right back to the beginning of the process and do all of this yourselves?
So for me, I started off from the fine food industry about 15 years ago, but I had always loved chocolate. I started hosting chocolate tastings, and people kept asking, well, what about these characteristics? What about these qualities? And at the same time, I was working with people within wine and whiskey who had all these amazing stories to share about the flavour, the varietals, what was going on in the cultivation process, and as well as the production process. And I found that really fascinating. And I thought, well, why aren't we doing this in chocolate? It was really astounding to actually identify that people didn't necessarily know those answers, and that we are in a production process that is so disconnected. And obviously cocoa and sugar, they both have some very questioning and challenging histories and heritages and current practices around them. And you could see that there was that enthusiasm and diligence around other things that we were just generally consuming, be it beer or coffee or tea. And for me, it was this big question, well, why aren't we being that diligent around cocoa and chocolate? And that, for me, kind of sparked off this journey, which is now we're standing in our chocolate factory.
And how many different products do you make with this process? We're standing in the shop right now. I can see shiny Easter eggs, there's truffles, there's mixed cocoa pods, all different shapes and varieties.
Now I'm trying to think about it. I think we've got over 200 products. We have a white chocolate, a milk chocolate, and then about 6 to 7 different origins of cocoa that we transform into our dark chocolate recipes.
And did that take a lot of experimentation at the beginning from you?
I started off kind of in my own kitchen. I thought, okay, we just need to have a great cocoa bean and we can do this really easily. I didn't realise that we'd have to learn everything else from the beginning again, and that there were so many different flavours and characters. So you kind of get so far and learn, and then each time you kind of realise that there's so much more you need to learn. It's a never-ending process, and that keeps it fun, interesting, challenging.
Is it a difficult product to work with as well?
The worst product imaginable. Also the best product imaginable, but kind of we use the word temperamental and tempering. It's like a needy child. Every time you think you've got it, it kind of will show you that it's boss. And it's fun though. It keeps it fun.
And it must pay off in terms of the reward of tasting it at the end. Is that the best bit?
Well, you have to not taste it, because if you're tasting it too much, you don't have much product to sell. But it's always wonderful for me kind of seeing people really enjoying something, and particularly when they just need that piece of chocolate or that chocolate cake or that hot chocolate. It's like that treat after a difficult week, and seeing that enjoyment, that is really, really rewarding.
I can't believe you can't smell that. It's like the air is thick with chocolate.
Yeah, not so much.
It's clear that to make it in chocolate, you have to be a master of invention and reinvention. And that's true whether you're a big player or small. I've been speaking to Heli Anttila, Head of Research and Development at Fazer Confectionery, which has been going for more than 130 years in Finland, with products on sale across the Nordic countries. And also Femi Oyedepe, who, by contrast, founded her small company, Losh's Chocolate, in Nigeria less than a decade ago.
I cleared out the guest room in my house in 2016. I was still doing the 9-to-5 job. So I would come in, put my baby upstairs, use the baby monitor and go into the guest room that I'd cleared out and just, experimented, trying out all of the different things, grinding, crushing, roasting, trying to figure it out. And the very first bar I made, I remember because I gave some of my colleagues to taste. They gave us a lot of feedback. They're like, oh, Femi, no, it's not smooth enough. No, this, tweak that, tweak this. And, it was a very interesting journey because what we are today is based on, is experiential in that sense.
So, Heli, your day-to-day job then is inventing new types of chocolate and confectionery. So how do you get your ideas? How do you start?
We get a lot of inspiration and ideas from our consumers. Then we are, of course, traveling around and get ideas around the world.
Part of your job is to travel around the world and eat chocolate.
That would be a dream. But of course, you get the different information from different sources around the world. So I think there is a brilliant amount of ideas. Then it is just that, okay, when is the right time to actually develop and launch a certain type of products, when there is a consumer demand.
How does it feel when you've developed a new product, a new taste, and it's on the shelves and people are going for it?
It feels great. You really feel proud of my team who is creating the products and creating the taste experience. It's really a great feeling.
Can you tell us about any flops where you just feel like we chocolate eaters just weren't ready for it?
I think those flops are as important as the products which are gaining great sales, because you always learn. There are some taste profiles which has been too early in the market. Consumption of the really dark chocolate in Finland is lower than, for example, in the Europe general or around the world.
So people in Finland prefer a sweeter milk chocolate?
Not so sweeter, but milk chocolate.
When you're launching a new product, how much of a risk does it feel? Because you have this history to be aware of, this reputation, this name.
Of course, there's always a risk, because even though that you test and develop, you cannot be 100% sure that it will be a successful launch. But it's also that you need to keep the portfolio inspiring, because in the chocolate and in the confectionery area, it's quite a lot of impulse. People want to taste the new flavors. They want to have a new experience.
Femi, you're working at a different scale to that, much smaller business.
Yes.
And I'm pleased to say I can actually have a taste of what you make here. This is your 70% dark chocolate.
Yeah.
See how
that's the snap.
Oh. That's the snap.
Yeah.
It's of course lovely.
Yeah.
So how does this bar differ to what you first created?
So the first creation wasn't smooth. It didn't have a snap. As you experiment more, you make more chocolate, you get better and improve on even existing recipes. We have 4 flavors, but we also make seasonal flavors like limited editions, indigenous flavors. So we've done some chocolates with plantain chips before, which was a hit.
Of course, the chocolate industry, it's not all sweetness and light. I mean, there are well-publicised issues around working conditions and child labour.
Yeah.
Heli, I wonder how a company like yours, a big company, can be sure of the integrity of their supply chain.
It is very important. Our foremost priority is, of course, to ensure the sustainable management of the cocoa sourcing, and we are securing it by that one, profitable farming and improving the whole cocoa community, that the trees are in good conditions, they are renewing it.
You mentioned sustainability in cocoa production is causing deforestation in some parts of the world. In West Africa, it's an issue, isn't it, Femi?
Yes, it is. It's a big issue. That's one of the reasons why we're experiencing a lot of supply chain issues as well, because the IVC is experiencing a lot of that. Ivory Coast. And they are like the largest producers in West Africa at the moment.
We are working with our cocoa sourcing with that. We are monitoring and mapping all of the farms where we purchase with a GPS location, that we can guarantee that they are not on the this kind of security areas of the rainforest, for example, or in the areas where in the risk area.
Heli, intriguingly, I've got a taste of the future here, apparently. This is a package of your chocolate. It says on it, the big label, no cocoa. So this is no cocoa chocolate made from malted grains. What's this all about?
Wow.
It's not chocolate tablet, it's a candy tablet. So it also shows that it is not like a chocolate, but it's a similar type of tablet. It's one of our innovation streams. It's also very important that there is something totally new, which nobody else is doing in the market.
Let me just have a try. It's intriguingly in blue wrapping. Oh, it smells very blueberry as I open the foil, and it's you can see the grains of blueberry. Very sweet.
Interesting. I'd have loved to try that one, actually.
I'm sorry I can't share it.
Oh.
I have to eat it all.
Oh.
So why no cocoa?
We are looking for the future of chocolate. We are also thinking about if availability of cocoa would decrease, what are other ingredients what we can use to produce similar type of taste experiences.
The cost of cocoa has been rocketing. It's doubled the market price of cocoa in the last year. That must be very challenging when your main raw material doubles in price.
Yeah, very, very challenging. It translates obviously into the final price of the chocolate. So I can understand why we may be looking at, alternatives to creating similar type of candy with a similar experience. But what makes chocolate, is actually cacao. We companies and governments and policymakers need to look at more sustainable ways in which we can preserve some of these farms in most of these countries that produce cacao, provide some sort of high-level support. We can't leave it to the big companies, chocolate companies. It has to be all the stakeholders being involved, ensuring that we're able to mitigate all the climate challenges that could come. Because that's the only way I feel can preserve this amazing fruit.
I wonder what you think the future of chocolate is then. Is it in peril? Is it possible that in 10, 20, 50 years' time we won't be eating chocolate anymore?
I think in 10, 20 years we may have alternatives in the market which are made out of something else, but we are still eating chocolate, I believe.
Already we're seeing a shift from eating mass-produced chocolate. People want to see and know where their chocolate is coming from. Even the big companies are looking at how to create more healthy chocolates, where they're exploring alternatives to the mostly dairy ingredients that are being infused in their chocolate. So it will be a market that has a wide variety of different types of candy, and chocolate will still be part of this offering.
But maybe not as big a part.
Maybe not. Well, Ruth, I think if we address the issues evolving around cocoa production, I don't think they are insurmountable.
Femi Oyedipe and Heli Anttila. Back in Chocolate City, many of the big factories which gave York its nickname have closed, although tourists still visit for a taste of the sweet stuff. They have to pay for it though. Cocoa prices have doubled since the start of last year, in part because of weather-related poor harvests in Africa, and that's putting pressure on businesses too. But chocolatier Sophie Jewett remains optimistic about the future.
As a chocolate lover, I know I'd do anything for chocolate. And I'm fairly certain I know an awful lot of other people that would be the same. I think we may have to get used to chocolate actually being a luxury good. But as we've found, we already pay higher prices for our cocoa. The bigger question is, it's an industry that needs this disruption. We need disruption of the supply chain, we need disruption of the production process. We can't keep just taking these raw materials and not replenishing the soil, the farms, the production process, and the communities and the shared value that exists in that process.
Sophie Jewett in York. So Hannah, I feel personally that it would be a shame to end the programme without sampling your grandpa's invention.
Of course, all in the name of research, of course. There you go.
Excellent. I've not had one in years. Hits the spot.
Very nice.
Well, thank you very much for telling us all about him and the work he and his colleagues did. And your granny too, of course, not to forget her. And thanks to everyone we spoke to in today's programme. Are there any great food inventors in your circle of family or friends? We'd love to hear their stories too. You can email thefoodchain@bbc.co.uk. And that's also the way to let us know what you think about the programme and to send us your ideas. From me and the rest of the team, Hannah Bewley and Beatrice Pickup, thanks for listening and join us again next week.